Hello, Kavita. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you, Diana?
I'm wonderful as well. Thank you so much for joining us. So we're
Thank
here
you for having
today.
me.
We're here today with Kavita Ahuja, who is, among a number of things, a very inspiring life transitions and core energy coach. She has dedicated her life to advancing the growth and inner power and reinvention opportunities for women in midlife. And her podcast is a must listen to, is called the Midlife Reinvention. She's created a number of courses and has a number of really exciting workshops for women. She's also a writer and an expert, personal expert on midlife transition. So I'm happy to have you here today to share a little bit about your approach to your own personal life. So tell me a little bit about this. I like to call them aha moment, or this decision, or the moment it all coalesced for you. It sounds like in your early 50s, you made some big decisions to change. Can you tell
Yes.
us a little bit about that?
Yes. Thank you for asking, Diana. It is, and I think it's very common, and maybe a lot of people who are listening will relate to this. But my defining experience wasn't really like a one big thing. It was kind of a journey of reinvention, which was a result of some smaller events that happened in my life. And it kind of all came in a culmination to this one moment where it's like, okay, things need to change. I'll kind of back up a little, back up a little, and then I come from a traditional background. I'm South Asian. I was born in Kenya. I was raised in Canada, and so I had a very traditional upbringing in which kind of things as were expected in marriage, children, career, education, all that. And I followed it, and so very happily. So it was kind of the picture of success, from the outside. Everything was wonderful or great, and I was happy. But then, as you mentioned, about the time I turned 50, something inside me changed. And I began to feel as though something was really missing. And I started to really ask questions to myself, like, what is this what I want to do for the rest of my life? What is my purpose? Am I really happy? And I was really overcome with feelings of not being fulfilled with not only my career, but there was other things that were happening all at once. And all, as women, we know what happens with our health changes, menopause. My kids were leaving the home. I was like becoming an empty nester. My relationship with my husband was fine, but it was, almost 25 years. It needed some revitalization. And all of this was kind of happening all at once. And I remember a specific moment on a Monday morning where I just did not want to get out of bed. I just was just, I was depressed. I was unhealthy. I was really had this sinking feeling that this career that I'd been in for my whole adult life was not my calling. It was not something that I wanted to do. It no longer fulfilled me. So I was just, I hit the snooze button about 5 times. I crawled further under the sheets. And so that's what happens in, with transitions, I believe, is that there's this triggering moment that's like, well, you can either move forward and change things. That's a trigger, right? Or you can decide not to and remain as you are. And I decided at that moment that things had to change and that I was going to take charge of my life. And I was determined to figure out who I really was, what I really wanted, and how to get there. And so for the first time in my life, I put myself first. And I went on a journey of rediscovery after many years of research and studying. And I discovered that my calling was actually to help other women do the same. Because I knew that looking around me and speaking to so many women that it was a common theme that at this age, at this stage in our life, we begin to question. And you know this better than anybody. We begin to question what is it that we want moving forward. So I made it my life's mission to help other women realize, based on my own experience, that you have the power within you to move forward. You have so much to offer the world. And so that's where I am today now. And I have, I am so much more fulfilled, and not without any, it was difficult because I launched this right when COVID started. So,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
going from a corporate career, I forgot to mention, I left my corporate career then of 25 years,
Wow.
which was a very successful career. But as I said, as the years went on, it was just something that wasn't fulfilling
Became
anymore. So,
impossible for you.
yeah, yeah.
Impossible to get
So,
out of bed and impossible to consider that that was going to be for the rest of your working life.
mhm.
So I'm always curious too, as you um, look back, you already mentioned that you had a very traditional childhood and expectations from your
Mhm.
family and the culture. And, at the time, I'm ahead of you by probably about 10 years, but I remember too, this is what we do. We
Mhm.
go and then for us as women in the time we grew up, there were more opportunities than women hadn't gotten the opportunities. So the big decision there was, do I go the traditional life? Like for me,
Yes.
it's like, um, maybe do a part-time career, but really seek out a husband and a family, or do I give it over to the career? So it sounds like you had it all, quote unquote,
Yes.
but that was the vision, is this success track that just would keep going up and up. Do you recall, this is just very curious, a time in your 20s or 30s where you had an inkling that maybe there was something else in you as opposed to this brilliant pharmaceutical corporate person?
Yeah, what happens, I think, and I don't know if you can relate, Diana, but I think when you're in your 20s and 30s and maybe even 40s, you're so busy doing stuff. You're so
Yep.
busy looking after other people. And that's fine. It's a good thing. You're looking at, your priorities are looking after your children if you have them, looking after, your work. You don't have time. You don't, and maybe you don't even take the time. And I didn't take the time to really ask those questions of myself, right? But I always had this thing about writing. It always something that I loved writing, and I always said, I should, one of these days I'm going to write a book. And I always loved relationships, and I always loved speaking to, especially women for some reason. And now I can connect the dots about what they're, what they really wanted out of life. And I love interviewing people, so I'm doing
Mhm.
that now.
Mhm.
So it's about listening. If you look back and looking at the breadcrumbs in your life that kind of lead you to where you are,
Yeah.
and it's uncanny. Like, and now I'm doing this more and more moving forward. Is listening to that voice inside of me that tells me, what is this the right thing? Is this the right path?
Yes.
And 9 times out of 10, that voice is always right. It always tells me the right path to follow. And so back then, I guess, in answer to your question, I probably had an inkling, but didn't do anything about it because life was so busy,
It's too
right?
much.
Yeah.
You're on a hamster wheel,
Hmm.
it may be an exciting hamster wheel, but it's one that keeps you going there. Um,
Yes.
and it usually does take this moment. Yours began after a confluence of thoughts, with the snooze button pushing, but so many people, it's sometimes decisions are made for you. It's people
Hmm.
that get laid off after a corporate
Yes,
career.
absolutely.
And that's, I look back on things like that in my life throughout the changes and transitions as gifts, really.
Hmm.
So talk to me a little bit about what two things I want to know. One, you work with women and you support their navigation through their midlife transition. So tell me a little bit about um, what advice you would give to women there that are now realizing that this isn't enough, or
Hmm.
this isn't me. What kind of words of wisdom would you pass along?
Yeah, it's a great question. Because the first advice I would give to women is that if you're looking to realize your life calling or ask what's next, it's the first thing you have to do is start from within. You really have to start from inside. And by that I mean looking at I have a process. I have a process in my program, for example, where we first look at your strengths. What are your strengths now? Because your strengths could be different from when they were younger. What are
Yes.
your strengths? What are your passions? What were you passionate about, for example, when you were a child?
Mm-hmm.
Can you bring that forward into what you're doing now?
Mm-hmm.
What are your changing values? Whatever as I, like I said before, my values perhaps when I was 20 or 30 was like raising my kids, and now it's more inwards.
Mm-hmm.
So looking inwards, when you look inwards and really assess your strengths, your values, your passions, and then understand that you have the power within you to really do whatever you want, because um, even though at this point, up to this point, you may not be as confident because you've been doing the same thing for your whole life, but you should develop the confidence in your abilities, and don't let the fears or the obstacles in your way stop you. And there's a process by which you acknowledge the fears that they're real, but how can we remove or at least quieten them, to move forward. And I really firmly believe that, especially at this age in life, whether it's in 50 or above, is that we have so much wisdom, so much experience from which to draw from, and so many talents that are not yet untapped. So I really truly believe that, if you truly are um, wanting to change your life or wanting to improve the next stage of your life, start from within and ask those difficult questions, and look at your life as a whole and see which areas you really want to focus
Yes,
on.
that's important.
And then,
That's
yes,
important to transition from what's my career path, what's my next
yes,
job, to saying, you know, I meet so many women who have been like yourself, very successful for so long. They can't
hmm
imagine not being a senior vice president anymore, or a CEO, or
hmm
they can't imagine. And this is one of the things too that I want to ask you about too, is that I like to talk about the gifts of our third act. And one of them is there's courage, and there are all sorts of gifts, but one of them
yeah.
too is being allowed to have a beginner brain and start something brand new. So
hmm
do you see that a lot in yourself and in the women you work with, that it's like, okay, I've never been a ballet dancer, but I'm going to learn to dance? What kinds of things do you see?
Oh my God. Everything I'm doing now is new. you know,
I love it.
like I went from corporate to entrepreneurship. You know how that is. That's like
Mhm.
always learning that all of a sudden you're doing everything yourself. You're the
Where's your
CEO, you're the
yeah?
marketing, you're the CMO, you're the CFO, and everything, right? So that's a learning curve. It's just exciting, and that's
That's
what I mean. You learn something. I mean, I never knew how to podcast, but I learned it because I think it also depends on your drive and your ambition to learn
true.
new things, and your desire to expand your own skills.
Mhm.
So it's not for everybody, but I think if you really want to keep your life exciting and to keep it more interesting, keep on learning new things, and don't be afraid of just letting go too. That's why I put play and power purpose play. Play to me means just enjoying every moment,
So power
and
purpose
being
play, I
grateful.
don't think I mentioned it. That's the name of your coaching practice. Is that
It's the
correct?
name of my business,
Yeah.
yes, and it's kind of the reason I called it Power Purpose Play is it's about the gifts we have, right? So
Mhm.
I believe that every one of us has a power of our inner guidance that I mentioned before, which can be inner strength. It doesn't mean the power of, the title that you
Mhm.
mentioned, the CEO.
Mhm.
It's our inner power to do whatever we want. Uh, and the purpose part is really living according to your values and your passions,
Mhm.
right? And the play part, as I mentioned, is being grateful for every moment, and just letting go, and enjoying every moment, because we don't know what's going to happen next.
Yep.
And I think as we go older, that we realize that more and more. You know.
Yeah, I like to say, when you see the end zone ahead more
hmm
clearly than you did when you were in your 20s, not to say it's looming, but when you
Yes.
see it more clearly, it's the moments, the days, you know,
Yeah.
the kicking the can down on the road on the passions that are inside you is hopefully for most of us, you know, not a behavior we choose to continue.
Right. Right.
So tell me, I love to ask this question, and I have of all the different storytellers that we're going to be hearing from in October. And I can't wait for you to share a little bit more about your story with us.
Yes, I'm
Um,
looking forward to that.
if I were asked to ask you to define your life's philosophy and create a bumper sticker that I could put on my
Mm,
car, what would it be?
great question. That's a great question. I always say, and I really truly believe this, my bumper sticker would be, if not now, when?
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? To
Such
me,
a
that means that, what are you waiting for? What are you waiting for to make the most of your life? You never know what, as I said, what the next moment brings. And so enjoy this present moment in your life because you don't know what the next moment brings. So I'd say, if not now, when?
yes. This is it, baby. Yeah. So thank
Yeah.
you so very much for spending a little time with us today as a preview for learning more about you and your personal transitions in October. If you're listening, I hope you will be tuning in October. Kavita will be, along with about 20 other women, sharing their third act quest stories. Many of them still, and this is another thing that'll be fun to explore too as we all go on, is like, okay, so I'm living this beautiful third act, but there's more. There's
Right.
always the potential for more and different and new. So you inspire women and you've inspired me today, and I'm just so pleased to have met you, and we'll see you very soon.
Thank you so much. I think it was meant to be that we met each other, and I look forward to the opportunity to tell my story. And thank you so much for the interview today.
You're so welcome.